I think they are on. Brilliant. Okay, fantastic. Well, welcome everyone tonight to the World Reimagined. This event is in association with Opal 22 and ACC. My name is Amanata Kamara. I'm a radio presenter at BBC Radio Leicester, and I'll be your host for this evening. Tonight's event, Art Under Resistance, is asking you the question: do black artists have to dilute their core message to engage a wider audience? Now, the aim of tonight's conversation is to have an open and honest conversation about the difficulties black artists face in the arts. We're going to be talking about everything from barriers to entry, existence once you're in certain spaces, pushing past the glass ceiling, and of course, trying to be your true, authentic self, if that is ever possible. And to help us to have that conversation, we have Panya Banjoko. She is a multi-award-winning poet, writer, activist, PhD researcher at Nottingham Trent University and co-founder of Nottingham's Black Archive. She's received notable recognition for her poetry with a number of publications and books and anthologies, also including the award-winning Dawn of the Unread, published by Left Lion magazine in 2016.
Go, girl.
Panya's work has been described as poetry with hip-hop energy fused with a hymnal element. Please give a very warm welcome to Panya Banjoko. Next is someone who is no stranger to the arts, visual artist, musician, and previous drummer of the internationally renowned reggae band Steel Pulse. They were once one of the biggest reggae bands to come out of the UK in the 80s and 90s, with sounds that run true to their Caribbean roots and lyrics that depicted the evils of racism. Colin was born in Jamaica, but arrived in Britain with the Windrush generation, where he developed his passions for drawing, painting, and visual art, a talent that's taken him from selling portraits to girls at school to now hosting successful exhibitions here in the UK, Germany, and beyond. Everyone, please give a very warm welcome to Colin Gabbidon. Trinidadian artist Karen McLean, whose work is rooted in historical research that questions the complex legacies of colonialism. To create her work, she uses sound, moving image, installations, and a variety of symbolic materials. Karen has always been very passionate about asking the public to face the ongoing and multi-layered legacies of colonialist traumas. Growing up in the 60s during post-independence Trinidad and the civil rights movement in America meant that Karen saw the start of the cultural reconstruction that expanded the rights of black and mixed-race people. These histories have informed both her identity and also her art. Please welcome Karen McLean. Speaker join us tonight, but unfortunately he's not able to be here. But it is such a pleasure to sit here and host this conversation with you all. The question, once again, is: do black artists have to dilute their core message in order to engage with a wider audience? Do think about that question throughout the evening tonight. We will be opening up the floor, so if you have any questions, if you have any comments or anything that you want to share, we'll definitely give you space to do that as well. Now, I want to kick off with you, Colin. Tell us about some of your early inspirations.
Okay, well, I'm a musician, as I said. The thing is, back in my early days, there was a lot of influence because in those days you had a lot of music, art, culture, everything was going on at that time. There was a mixture of everything happening. And when you're young, you always find everyone's keen to get a hold of something or be part of that thing, you know. And so when with the art, I came into art. The first time I remember doing art was when I was at junior school. There was a plantation, tea plantation, you know, those Indian fields where they're picking the tea leaves and everything. I remember doing that picture, and what what I did before that, I can't remember actually coming up to that point of being an art, doing art or drawing, but I just remember that bit. And from that day in school, they went crazy. The teacher would take me out of my class, put me into other classes, showing the kids what to do, because somehow it just blew their mind. And so from then, that's when it started. And at the same time, music came into the fore as well, because at the time with my brother, by the way, my brother was the founder of Steel Pulse. And so at that time, everything was just starting up. The art was starting, the music was starting, and we were having influences on both sides of the fence and that. So he actually introduced me to the Bob Marley and the Wailers at the time, and I remember because we were playing music at that time. In fact, Steel Pulse had started, and it was wow, fantastic. And at that same time, I would say I was getting involved with doing drawing, portraits, and starting to develop that side of myself as well. And so there was two paths, and they were going along nicely. And so Steel Pulse was formed. I was doing commission work, portraits for the, as you say, the school kids. Girls and and it was great. So I had Bob Marley, big influence. I was into jazz music as well. So you have the jazz musicians. As far as the art goes, at that time there was no one that I was inspired by. I was just inspired. What inspired me was actually just doing things that look good. If it moved me, I would do it. And also my brother was a good influence. The same brother that was in formed Steel Pulse. I remember he did a drawing one time, we were very young, and I always say this to people. He did this drawing of someone sitting in a chair. And you look, being young, you look at that drawing and you see that it's like this person wanted to get out of the chair. I thought, wow, how do you do that? You're young, you're not experiencing all these things. So when I saw that encouraged me. I said, I want to do that. I want to be able to do a picture. But the funny thing is, at the time, I wasn't really I wasn't good at sketching. I would take more draw. But I love the idea of being able to sketch something where you can and use this movement in the picture. So he had that skill, but funny enough, he didn't continue. He continued the music side of things. So he was a big influence on me as far as the art was. And as I said, the music had a lot of inspiration from other musicians at the time.
There was something that you said that really stuck out to me. You said, if it moved me, I would do it. And I think that's something that's really powerful about art and creativity in general. It is a reflection of the world that we live in and the experiences that we have every single day. And I know for you, Karen, in just the introduction I wrote there, the world you're growing up in and the world that you're in has formed a very big part of not just your identity, but your work as well. I wonder if you can tell us a little bit more about your upbringing. You were growing up in the 60s and actually how that has inspired your work.
Yeah. So I grew up in Trinidad and Tobago. I was very young when Trinidad got independence from the British, and I actually had to live through the dismantling of all the colonial structures. Well, not all, because they still have a lot, of remnants. But it was a tumultuous time because, of course, shortly after, that independence, civil rights movement started in America, and of course that trickled down to us in the Caribbean. So in the 70s, we had what you call Black Power revolutions. I would go to school in the morning and we'd run into a revolution. The street would be packed. It was pretty scary for a little girl, My dad is white and my mom is mixed race. I'm really multiracial, as a lot of people in the Caribbean are. And, so, I'd be going to school and my dad would be driving me car, so it'd be really frightening sometimes. But yeah, it was an important part of our history because that really saw the beginning of things changing. And at the time, we had our first black Prime Minister, Dr. Williams, and they were clearly saying to him, look, you might be changing lots of things, but at the end of the day, the person who's going to get that job is not going to be a black person, So they were forcing him because the Black Power Revolution teamed up with the unions as well. So it was a really critical time for the country, and that's when things really started to turn. So growing up in the Caribbean in those days, race was quite an issue. It was even an issue in my family, because my dad did not marry a white person. So, race has always been a big part of my life. And coming here, so I came here as an adult, and you just think, finally, you've kind of come to what you call the mother country. And of course, in the Caribbean in those days, we still had our curriculum still had English, but we learned, our history was slavery, obviously. And that's one of the things I really admired about England, how they kept their history intact, architecture, etc., etc. And I come here and I realized, well, hold on a minute, this was an English colony, where is this history, and couldn't find it anywhere. So I had a big change of career when I came, and I went straight into university. And in the, as an immigrant, you keep going back and forth a lot. When you first move, you go back and forth. You want to take the children home and that sort of stuff. And I was going back, and of course, you're going back and you're sort of seeing things through a different lens. It becomes tinted, in a different way. And every time I go back, you're seeing, this post-colonial island still in front of you. And in those days when I was at art school, the buzzwords were post-colonialism is dead. That's what they say to us all the time. So I'm going back and I'm saying, well, hold on a minute. We're living this every single day. Post-colonialism isn't dead. One of my very first pieces was called Post-Colonial Now. And at that time, of course, I was still very displaced. It took me a really long time, actually, to settle. And I think one of the main reasons why I couldn't settle was because I couldn't see myself reflected anywhere, and my history was not there. How could you lay down your roots if you have no history? So, so my first piece was Post-Colonial Now, and I built this shack, like what we have in the Caribbean. And that was interesting as well, because it took me about, probably they gave me a little space in the courtyard in the back of the university to build it, and I think it took me about 2 years to build it, because I was doing everything part-time. I was a mother at that stage, and I had a young son, and I'd be building it, and nobody could relate to it as a home, an abode, a shack, as we call it in Trinidad. Everybody kept saying, you're building like an outdoor, what do you call it? Shed. It's lost. Couldn't find a word. Yeah, everybody saying, why are you building a shed? So people could not relate to the fact that people actually bring families up in a shack like this in the Caribbean, whole families, And so it was a really interesting journey. I think one of the things that really helped me to settle was Peter Fryer's book, Staying Power. that was one of the most really brilliant books that I've read, that really gave me context that I was now living in. And so I think that helped me to settle a lot, to be able to create my own history in a lot of ways. I was actually creating my own pictures and my own history, but it gave me the tools really to settle.
I think it's always a shock when people come from other countries, the Caribbean, from Africa. My heritage is Sierra Leonean, so when my parents and my grandma came over and my parents came over, there was this big shock. This UK that you expected it to be was nothing in comparison to the ideals and the images and all of that. It was completely contrary to that. So hearing you having to go backwards and forwards and all those questions you were asking, I think is really pertinent, and we'll go on to talk a little bit more about the work that you've done over the last few years. To come to you, Panya, do you have any, or can you recall any early icons or any particular people who stood up for you as your early influences?
I'm not a visual artist, so I'm the anomaly on the panel here. I'm a writer, a performance poet, and so my line with Black British, so there's nowhere for me to go back to. This is it. This is it. But having said that, there was obviously still that influence from the Caribbean coming in, because if you know anything about how Caribbean families are structured, you know that when parents came over, they left children behind. They started the family here, so I was one of the children born here, but I had siblings who were born in Jamaica, and then they came over at a later stage. So I had a sister who came over at the age of 15. And when she came over, she brought with her a book by Louise Bennett, a book of poetry by Louise Bennett. This is something I'd never seen before, because I hadn't been part of the first wave going through the British education system. So a bit of a guinea pig, and really difficult to negotiate the systemic racism that we experienced at that point. So anything to do with nation, language, or anything like that outside of the home, I'd never seen it before. So here was a book written in nation language, speaking to me. I remember Louise Bennett's poem, Colonization in Reverse, and I learned it off by heart. I just soaked up all of her words, because this was the first time I'm really experiencing this on the page. And with it being on the page, it's got credibility, because this is something that's been published. And it kind of rocked up against what I was being told in the home. Speak properly, so that you can get by. So it was like a contradiction. Here I've been told to speak properly, and here is this book of poetry by this fantastic historian. She was a historian, reciting history in poetry. So Louise Bennett was one of the people that I first came up against, and then after that, Jean Victor Breeze, her poetry. And people like Linton Kwesi Johnson as well. They're some of the influences, because when I started out as a poet, I started out as a dub poet. That's how I started out. So everything was spoken, lyrical. It had a rhythm to it. So that's how I started out. And people like Louise Bennett, Jean Victor Breeze, and Linton Kwesi Johnson, and Mutabaruka as well were people who were my influences at that point. And of course, music was a big influence too. So I listened to a lot of Steel Pulse, a lot of Bob Marley, and a lot of Aswad as well. So and I had older brothers who were in bands as well. So music, the lyrics on those music was also a big influence in my life.
How were you discovering those poets? I know you said your sister brought over a book, but did you have any other resources of finding Black poets or Black writers, especially in those early days?
Nothing really structured. There were certain initiatives that were set up in Nottingham, because that's where I hail from. So we used to have, there was an initiative called the Black Resource Kit. and they had lots of books. Because this is the time, you're talking about the 70s, when people like Bernard Cord, who wrote the book about the underdevelopment of the black child.
Black child was the education and
Exactly. So it was at that point where multiculturalism was seen as a cure to systemic racism, which we would find out decades later that multiculturalism is never going to stop systemic and structural racism. So at that time there was lots of different initiatives like the Black Supplementary School movement that was trying to push culture into our homes and into our schools. So I have to admit, and I know this is being recorded and it will go out, that as a youngster I did take books from the Black Resource Kit. I did. I liberated books. Because where else was I going to get it from? I wasn't getting it at home. There was no books in my house.
Okay.
I wasn't getting it at school. So when you come up against a community initiative where you can see black books, of course you're going to take one, take that home and start devouring it. So I was reading things like George Jackson, his prison letters, and Malcolm X and Marcus Garvey, all these things as a teenager. That's the kind of books I was reading. I didn't realise it then, but I was on this militant path.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if that is potentially one of the early barriers. Access to resources, access to books or to other influences or other people, and I guess when you are able to source that and find it, you hold it close and you're not going to let go of it because you are able to see yourself in those other people. And I guess when you have family and other people around you who are doing that, like I said, your brother was actually one of the key factors in your journey. It does start to propel you into the next level. I guess also, as I said, our main question to today is, do black people face barriers in art, but also do they have to make themselves feel small or minimize or who they are in order to be accepted or seen in a wider space? To come back to you, Colin, when you first began in music, as much as you were able to see Bob Marley, the Wailers, did you see yourself as becoming the success that you were?
Well, in regards to music, I did see, the only problem with that is when you can see as an individual, if you're working with a group of people, they all have to have the same vision. And so, because of that, you're going to have different routes, ideas of which route to take. When you're going along, if you see the vision, do you go that way or do you go that way? And if that way is the right way, you've got to convince the others that's the way to go. And so, yes, I had this vision, but again, you either work with those people you want and fight till you convince them that's the way to go, or you eventually say, like, I know now I should have. Take off. That's what you gotta do sometimes. If you've got the vision, you gotta go that way. But unfortunately, I didn't go that way. I waited and worked with. The thing is, as well, it's not just about running after that success. It's that passion of doing what you love. The music we were doing, no one was doing it. It was a unity, it was a family, it was a commitment of, expressing yourself. And we were on that trip, so, as I say, you either go with that passion or you go with saying, okay, I want to be successful and I want to make it and forget the love, the passion, and just want to get it, And that's a route sometimes we have to take. But I like to express whatever, whichever subject or whatever I'm doing, it's got to be passionately expressed. And so art, for instance, I remember being in school and everybody saying, okay, you're gonna go to university or whatever, or study further as art, and what kind of job are you gonna get? As an artist, do you want to work for a company? And one of the things I remember always thinking was, I don't want to work for a company. I don't want to go to any form of institution to work and to be dictated to about how I want to express myself. What I'll do, I will either take on a job, a day job, because you're gonna earn money, but I want to express my art, myself. One of the downfall, if you like, one of the disadvantage I had was, if you're gonna go that way, it also means that you're gonna find your own ability and how you want to express it and what's the right formula, the right way to express it. I mean, people go to university and college, art college and whatever, to find to be told which way to put the pencil to the paper, how to do that, how to shade that, and what, I always had this thought, I mean, it's probably a bit naive, I don't know, but if everyone is taught the same way, there won't be any difference in the artwork that comes across, that personal expression won't be there. So if someone is doing a drawing and they happen to do rugged lines that doesn't meet the way it's supposed to meet, that's their personal art, that's their expression. But if you're taught to put all the lines like this, every picture you see out there is going to be the same. A bit naive maybe, but and that's what I felt. So I was always I always had the idea of just be yourself, express yourself the way you want to do it, and maybe one day it will work and you'll be successful, So, yeah.
I think education, the whole education system is an interesting one in itself. Oh, did you want to clap? Oh, sorry. I think the whole education system is an interesting one. I know, Karen, we spoke briefly, and you were talking about when you came and you was doing your master's degree, and it was just like, I don't know if this is kind of what I want to do, or because of how the whole thing is shaped. And art is an interesting one because sometimes it is subjective. I definitely struggled with that in my studies, and I guess those can be other different kinds of barriers. That sometimes that institution that needs decolonizing in a lot of ways can be a challenge. I wonder if we could speak more into that experience.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I think that's where it starts, really. I mean, the education system really needs to be revamped. When I went to art college, I think I started in 2003. I started in 2001. Did foundation, and then I did a degree, and then I went on to do my master's. And I have to say that, as I said, they were taking you to all these museums and so on, and I'm thinking, I really can't connect with this work. There were a couple of people that I really connected with, like Mark Rothko, Donald Judd, Joseph Boyce, Louis Bourgeois, Emma Hess, but other than that, there were just so few. And the other thing is that at university in 2003, in art history, there are not a lot of black artists that are written about. So, they would recommend a couple of books, like the one with Ed Chambers. There are a couple of books, that they were well recommended over and over, but there was not a lot in art history for us to really delve into, the other story. That's what it was. And then you have the Black Art Group in Wolverhampton. There were a couple, just a couple of books. So I really struggled, and then I struggled with the tutors, because Birmingham is such a multicultural society, but yet the entire staff were all white. Barbara Walker came in occasionally, but as a visiting tutor, to do drawing. So there wasn't anybody that could really relate, to what I was doing. And as you say, this is a passion. The other thing that's really critical is that one cannot separate oneself from one's culture. So I grew up in the Caribbean, this is my culture. So if an art institution is trying to push me another way, I can't. I have to do, as you say, what's coming from in here. It's what I'm passionate about. It's what I am interested in. And that's what I did. It was really very difficult, and I always have to say, thank God I had my husband, because that's what we did on the dinner table. Poor fella, he had to hear about my artwork all the time, but he's Jamaican, and if he wasn't there for me to actually talk about that history I don't think I would have survived. It was really very difficult, and so yeah, art has to be about what you're passionate about, and what is your culture is a really important part of what you produce. You can't produce what you're not. You have to be. I think it's really important as an artist to be true to yourself. Because if you aren't, you can't really do it, can you?
So I guess when you are creating and you're making that work, whether as an artist, a poet, a musician, how does it feel when you know that you have to push everything you are? Because we do put ourselves in our art, we are our work, you can't really separate yourself from that. So when it comes to sharing that with a wider audience, with an audience probably who isn't from where you're from, doesn't share the same background, doesn't have the same heritage or history, or sometimes even knowledge of that history, how do you feel when it comes to sharing that? Or do you just share it because that's just what you do as an artist, you create work and you share it?
Yeah, and I think that for me anyway, my art is also a form of activism. My son has had to grow up here, and if it wasn't for us, he would not have that historical background either. And I use my art as activism. It's part of the education.
How about yourself, Panya?
In terms of using my art as...
And sharing it with wider audience, how is that experience for you? Is it something you consciously think about, how people are receiving it?
Kind of. Yes, I think about a lot of things when I'm creating a poem. I do think about the audience, I do think about myself, I do think about the wider, bigger picture. When I'm putting a poem out in the world, I do want that poem to count. I want it to make a difference. I want it to challenge. I want it to invoke discussion. So all of these things and more are things that I am mulling over when I create a piece. And then there's the creation of the piece, and then there's the performance of the piece and how that piece is performed as well. I think about that. I think so. I have a poem called Airport. It's about being strip searched at the airport. It's a poem that could quite easily be delivered angrily. It could quite easily be delivered as a rant, but I choose to perform it really calmly, really measured, because I don't want the message to be missed by what often the label that is often attributed to people like me, angry black woman. So I don't want people to turn away from the words because they think, oh, this is just an angry black woman ranting. So I chose very carefully the mode that I was going to perform that piece in. So I do think about all of these things.
Would you change that depending on who the audience is? So if you were sat in a room full of black people, would you deliver that poem differently than if you were in a room full of white people?
There are poems that I will deliver differently. There are poems that you'll find in my collections or wherever that's written in one particular way, but if I'm performing it live and I'm performing it to a particular audience, I might change words. And that's, I guess, that's the beauty of a live performance. You can do that. You can, in a live performance, you can feel the energy in the room, and you can then sculpt your piece to fit that and to bring something new to that audience. So yes, I make those decisions, and sometimes those decisions are made in a split second. Sometimes I might be thinking, I'm going to, do you know what, I don't care, this room is full of all white people, I'm going to go out and I'm going to perform this poem. But sometimes you stand there and the energy that you get, you perform it in a different way, and that's just feeling the energy in the room at the time.
Yeah, I mean, that's like, it's like music, you know, you have a band, depending on the audience that you're going to, you know. You select the songs that you want to play, which is going to suit the audience, you know. You can't do a heavy one drop in front of some nuns or anything. So. No, saying that. I saw something online of nuns dancing to this live reggae band.
Oh, there you go.
But no, it's the same thing. You know. As artists, you do have to be kind of selective in how you put it across and what you put it across. You know.
And I think that's what makes a good artist, because the main thing is to get that message across. So it's you have to think of the medium to get that message across. So I don't think there's anything bad in feeling out the audience and then tailoring what your work to suit that.
So that's quite interesting then. That's more of like an artistic decision making, as something that as a creative you would do. And even thinking about ourselves as human beings, I would shape myself differently if I was with my friends. Then maybe the language I would use is different to my friends than I would use at home. I think we naturally navigate certain spaces.
Yeah.
But I wonder if there is something specific when we are talking about race, when we are talking about ourselves as black artists, and I think I'm going to ask the question directly. Do black artists have to dilute their message to engage with a wide audience?
Who are you asking that to?
Well,
Whoever wants to answer it.
I'm kind of lucky because I don't really deal with the wider audience. I work on commission. I get commissioned to do a project piece of work. So, you know, they tell me what they want and that. So I don't really. I'm not like most artists. They will have a set of a group of work that they've done and they have to sell it to the public. You know, that's kind of tough, because it's a miss, basically. But saying that, I'm finding that black art is really acceptable, you know, these days. In the earlier days, you know, but the more people are becoming more aware of certain things and history and everything, you find that black art is international. You know, African art. That is like wildfire. And I must admit, I am guilty of not doing that kind of stuff. You know, I need to start getting into those, some kind of African arts. Yeah.
So for you, Colin, you're saying that no, a black artist, and when I say the term artist, I mean a musician, creative, absolutely everything that comes under, I guess, the creative industry. Or maybe even as black people.
I mean, again, it's like the music. You go to a reggae gig concert, and it's full of white guys and white people. Your art is fine. There's not so many black people around. It's amazing. You know, even back in the day, I mean, Bob Marley started that really because he got to his gig. So how many black people were there? It's right, and now reggae music is so international now. I mean, Radio 1 was my enemy when I was growing up. Radio 1 was so biased, you know, and they would. I'm one of those people. I do influence. You know. But there was it was too selective. The mainstream media, you know, even back then, now it's open market, you know, but back then it was very selective. With the music, the reggae music, they would select, we'll throw this one in now, take it out, just to make the public feel good. You know, but as time goes on, we had underground radio station, you know, these pirate radio stations. People were gravitating more to these stations now. They was leaving the mainstream radio, you know. So the BBC,
music.
yeah. So all these mainstream radio stations, they had to change. They had to start getting into it. So they started to play more reggae music, yeah, because they were left behind. Mm-hmm. And the same with everything else, you know, visual arts and everything. It's more universal. It's as if people are waking up to truth and reality. You know, there's a truth, reality going on now.
And I think that's recent with George Floyd's and
Yeah.
Black Lives Matter. I mean, people are definitely becoming more conscious, and they are beginning to realize now that, you know, they have to do something, you know, because no longer can you just hide this history anymore. It's time to engage with it. Yeah, I think, as you said, African art has really been getting in the limelight. But I think Caribbean artists are now beginning to, you know, come out and have their day as well. As you can see with the islands exhibition at the Tate Britain in New York, you know. So I think, you know, the people are now beginning to realize that, you know, we have such a wealth of Caribbean artists here. And I think things will get better now.
I think what you mentioned with George Floyd being, I think there was something pivotal happened at that point. Yeah. We will come back to that. Panya, I know you feel like you wanted to share something.
Yeah, I want to share notes, but let's just try and narrow it down. Okay, so I wanted to respond to the do we dilute our information? So speaking as a writer, it's not so simple as yes or no, because there's one strand of my work where I'm writing for myself, I'm writing what I want to write. I'm looking at this age to have a publisher who will publish what I want them to publish. So say something like this, for example, my most recent pamphlet, Reframing the Archive, I get really down and dirty about the heritage sector. And that's everything I want to say and how I want to say it. But then actually when I get a commission to write or to edit or to write a chapter or what have you, and then that has to go through the editing process. So that goes to an external editor. So I might write and say I might write Bondon Babylon. Right? I might write that, but then the editor will be coming back to me and say, well, I think we need to tone that down and perhaps if we say something else. And so then I'm left with that choice of then what do I do? Do I say, no, it's got to be this, and then I don't have my work published in that chapter or in that anthology, or do I make that compromise so that the bulk of what I want to say is published in that chapter? So it's not as black and white, certainly not in my field. You know, there is an editor that has that overarching control over what I put out there. So sometimes my work is slightly changed to fit whatever perceived market. Because I do query the publishing industry when they say this work won't sell or there isn't a market for this. I do query that because you know, if you look at the publishing industry, and I'm sure that will probably be the same in the arts industry when you start to look at who are the curators and, you know, who are the people who own and manage these galleries, it's predominantly white people. So when they talk about not being able to reach an audience, is it because they are not tapped into those networks, and it's not necessarily that there isn't an audience for that work? So those are the issues.
What I find as well, I think personality and the charisma that you portray can sell things, can make people be attracted to whatever you put in out there. I mean, if you are a writer, if you wrote beautiful words, and then you're going to do the reading of it, and you ain't got a personality or character or charisma about it, it won't go down too well.
Oh, actually, I don't think that's true. I think that there's a lot of white people who write stuff and have no character or personality, and they've got really good publishing deals.
Start to win.
Because they're in that network.
And that's why maybe Michael Jackson went the way he did.
And also, I think when we're talking as well, because I've really mulled over this question over the last few weeks, really trying to think about myself, not only as I am now, as established in my field, knowing who I am, won't take any nonsense, but actually I think about myself as I was before as a young writer coming in, and I think about the young artists coming through who don't have the experience, who don't have the confidence that we have, and are probably making those decisions to dilute their work because that's the only way to get further up the ladder. So I sit here in a privileged position as someone who has been through the mill, who's faced a lot of discrimination, who's had to really fight hard to do the work that I'm doing. So I can sit here privileged now saying, oh yes, because I've been published, and no, I don't need to dilute my work, I write what I want. But actually coming through, these are some of the things that I had to consider along that path. So I think we just need to be also mindful of where we are now and where some artists are at present, the younger artists coming through.
I think that's really true. I think what you said about having to, even currently sometimes having to have those questions with publishers, and it's interesting, who are these publishers? What networks are they associated with? Who are the gatekeepers? Who are the ones who are making the decisions? Are they people, as I said earlier, who understand who you are, who know where you're coming from? When you use those colloquialisms and that language, are they getting the true context? And actually, if you deliver that exactly how it is, that's very powerful because it's true of who you are and where you're coming from. And if you turn it down and change it into something else, well, does it have the same impact? Does it have the same power? I wonder if we can lean more into that though, because I do think it's quite interesting. Not necessarily from the perspective of an artist, but actually as an individual. I don't know if you'll be pleased to hear this, but there was a podcast I listened to on BBC Radio 1 Extra. There was a podcast that came out around the time of George Floyd. It was a conversation with DJ Ace and another DJ whose name just escaped me. And they were talking about how, for them, working for an organisation such as it was a beautiful interview because they spoke about what it's actually like being black in an organisation such as the BBC. And I was quite surprised the BBC allowed that to happen, but it was a brilliant time and opportunity to have that conversation. But some of the things they were talking about was actually walking into work, or sometimes even on the journey to work, being on the train and having to make yourself feel a bit small in order to not make the person next to you feel uncomfortable, or to not make the white lady feel anxious because you're a big black man. And there was a time, there was a caller that called in, and this woman, I can't remember her name, but she called in and was very transparent and said that I don't know why, but I feel uncomfortable anytime I see a tall black person. I don't know why I feel that way, I don't know where that's coming from, but I just feel that way. And there are sometimes these silent, hidden perceptions we have of the other that we don't know about, which can have a detrimental impact. And so around the time, I bring it back to George Floyd, around the time of George Floyd's murder and all the conversations that were happening, it was very much about people saying, well, actually, I'm tired of making myself small. I'm tired of minimizing my identity and who I am just to make someone else feel comfortable. I'm tired of toning down myself, as you mentioned earlier, in order to fit into this space or make you accept me. Are any of those experiences, I'll limit it to any of you, that any of you have had throughout the course of your career? And at any point, does it actually made you want to not do this anymore?
I mean, I like to answer that. I absolutely have those experiences, and I'm still having those experiences now. I'm just redefining it. I'm redefining it now as I'm a skilled professional, and I'll go into an environment and I will slot in and adapt to whatever the working condition is. So and bring over the project that I'm working on. So I look at it in terms of when it comes to being a producer or a project manager, which is the other side of the work that I do. If I have to tone myself down or adapt or what have you, I consider that to be good skills as a project manager and as a creative producer. This is how I'm redefining it now in my later years, because these things are still there. The murder of George Floyd happened. There was a flurry, I call it the George Floyd flurry, when all the organisations wanted to show that they were down with diversity. But actually, when you sweep away the surface and you look deeper into these organisations and you see the structure of them, you'll see that it's an all-white board. You see that the management of the organisation is predominantly all-white. So whatever it is they're trying to do by doing a little discrete project or a little event isn't going to cut it in terms of dismantling systemic and structural racism. What we need is for boards to be diverse, and we need for the management of these organisations to be diverse as well. That's what we actually need. We've tried multicultural education in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s with the Black Supplementary School movement. That didn't change anything because multicultural education wasn't the problem. It wasn't the fact that we didn't know about where we are from or who we are. It was the fact that we had the oppressor's knee on our neck. And we can read George Jackson and we can read Marcus Garvey or Malcolm X, but that doesn't stop the knee still being on our neck. And that's the bit that we need to change. And we've always been trying to challenge things, trying to change things from the bottom. Let's do a multicultural day, let's do this. But actually what I'm saying is there needs to be a shift and we need to change things from the top. That's where things need to change. Those boards need to be diverse, and then hopefully we'll have this trickle-down effect. I'm not sure if that this is my theory and I'm speculating, but let's give it a go, but I can assure you that when we begin to say this and to say loudly that there will be resistance from the top will not want to be dismantled. As you know, with my situation at Nottingham Castle, the top do not want to be dismantled at all, and that's where the work needs to happen.
Karen, you were nodding a lot in agreement.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you whether, because earlier on I mentioned about, or you mentioned about art being political. Is there something about being an artist that means you have a privilege in these spaces to actually call things out and actually address it and be very overt with that?
I think that dealing with the subject matters that I deal with, it's really important. Yes, I think of my audience, but there are lots of things that you have to think of, as you will see. You have to be true to yourself. You have to be passionate. You have to think of how you're going to deliver it, the space that you're delivering it in, etc., etc. But I don't feel that I want to water it down. I think it's really important for me anyway that it has an emotional effect. So, I don't think art is effective if you don't actually walk into a gallery and feel something. You know, that to me is critical. I don't know if you see my work, but I do these big installations, and I would fill a room. One of the recent exhibitions I did had 12,000 origami boards and 80 crosses, you know, so it was a huge space. So it takes me about 2 years to really create a project, because one, it's extremely research-based, you know, and from the research you would really evolve and becomes what it becomes, you know. I mean, sometimes, you know, other things happen, like actually when I did Blue Power, you know, we had COVID, and COVID actually, in each of the 80 crosses there was a blue carbonic soap. So blue carbonic soap is called cake soap in Jamaica, or blue soap in Trinidad, and we use it for a myriad of things, you know, to wash off all the bad vibes, to, you know, cleanse. I mean, if anything is happening bad to you, just bathe in blue soap, you know. But then COVID came, and, you know, I had this blue soap curtain that you had to walk through, you know. So there was this cleansing before you got into the gallery. And then you got into the gallery, and the crosses were situated in the gallery like a war memorial, you know. But then then COVID showed that, you know, there was such a discrepancy, you know, between rich and poor, and how it had affected, you know, minorities, black people, and especially black men, you know what I mean? And the work was really about what was happening in the Caribbean, or we were losing a generation of young men, you know, due to the legacy of colonialism, you know, the poverty that continues generation after generation. And so the work took on this other layer with COVID and what had happened. So I think when I don't know, I mean, making work, it's really, it's not an easy thing, you know, and it has to be, like you said, you know, there's so many, you know, different dimensions that need to be really thrashed out in your head when you're doing it. But I never want to really dilute it, and I try to, just as I said, make it really powerful, really emotional, and, you know, get the message out there.
And I guess you are the main decision maker. There isn't anyone telling you what to do. You're not necessarily working for an organisation. You have complete freedom to do this work and put it on without any filter in any way, shape or form. And I think it's so amazing what you said about art is only powerful if you are able to do it 110% and put everything in. You're not filtering out or toning it down, you know, in any way, shape or form. I wonder if it was a very similar thing for you, Colin, especially with your music in the early days where your music was taught. I think you've got a song called KKK or Klukos. Your music was very much.
By the way, can I say, I left the band many years ago. I gotta be honest. I was just the founder member, one of the founder members. You know. But when the first album came out, I wasn't there at the time. But I was doing some of the songs before they did the album. So I left very early. But I mean, there's an instance where we used to do shows and we played somewhere in Birmingham, this hotel. And, you know, this is just as much as the arts that we do, you know, to be able to express yourself. So we're expressing ourselves as a band and the style of music we're playing, you know. And we literally had folks, we're young, so they're old, you know, wanting to drag us off stage. I mean, you know, these are black people wanting to drag us off stage. So it's not that they can relate, or it's the same music, it's reggae music. I guess because of their age, they couldn't actually relate then to that type of reggae music. And they wanted to drag us off stage.
So what year was that?
What year? That was
70s, 80s?
no 70s. That was 75, 76, 76 actually.
In those days, reggae was not very seen as a. Was it? What was on the scene already? It was conscious.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, the young teenagers, and it goes to show that when you expressing yourself with what is passionate to you and where you want to deliver it, people are going to react, and not everyone's going to love it or like it. You know, even your own kind, if you like, you know. Now it's a generation thing, you see.
But I think for me as an artist and me, that like I said, you know, the book takes on different layers once it gets into the gallery. I think that the end result is that it has to be universal. You know what I mean? So that even though it's such a subjective thing, art, that when you get in there, you react to.
But as I say, you know,
what you bring to it. You know what I mean?
Well, as I say, you know, you can put anything across. Really, it's how much of that passion you put with it. You know, because people see that. People can see that. Once they see your passion and the sincerity that you're coming across with, that's the selling point.
Yeah.
You know, it's like if you wear the wrong clothes and you go somewhere. And you're wearing the wrong shoes or something, people are going to dismiss you, if you like. You know, so it's not only what you're actually putting across there, but it's how you're putting across and commitment, deliverance, passion. That sells. That sells. Yeah. People accept it. You know, so yeah.
I wonder if we can take it back a step, Colin, with your art, and in terms of how you first got recognised as an artist, and obviously now you've gone through the years and now you're making huge commissions and fantastic work. But in those earlier days, how did you get in? Because I think that's where a lot of artists and creators are wanting to be. It's that entry into quote unquote those mainstream spaces.
To be honest, it's slow things like word of mouth really, and then there's no social media. Like ourselves in commission work. So, yeah, you do one, somebody else, you get phone calls, and it just builds up from there. That's it really, because as I said, there was no social media to be posting yourself out there. And it was also being there, having the presence to be at wherever you need to be. I used to have to be traveling all over the country, you know, whereas, I mean, that's all also to promote yourself. You know, it's not just to sell yourself, but it's you have to be there to promote yourself, introduce yourself, and move around.
Networking.
Yeah, so it's a lot of moving around. So, yeah.
Which is quite masculine in a sense, because as a woman artist coming through, I couldn't be here, there and everywhere because I was raising 4 children. Mm-hmm. So I didn't have that freedom to go and network here. And in Nottingham, around the time when I was coming through, we had a writers and artists group called CHROMA, the Chronicle of Minority Arts. It existed in the 80s and partway through the 90s, and that was kind of a hub to bring together black artists and writers and to support and development. And I couldn't even be part of that because I was raising 4 children. I had my 4 children, and they were very close together in age as well, so it was madness, it was mayhem. So I couldn't even really tap into that. And when I got to a point where the youngest then did go to school, and I felt, well, okay, I've got a little bit of space here now to really try and pursue my art. And bearing in mind, I'm getting no guidance. There's no literature development officer that's giving any guidance to any black artists here at the time in Nottingham. Hence, the current group setting itself up. When I decided, this is it now, I want to try and focus on this, and then I applied to do a creative writing degree, I was rejected. I was rejected because, and I'll always remember the words, that the poetry I wrote, this is what they said to me, the poetry I wrote would not appeal to the other students on the course who were predominantly middle-class white men. So therefore, on that basis, they rejected me. And that's the kind of challenge I like. That was the challenge that I really loved, because I thought, okay, well, let's see about that. And I did it. I came through and I'm a published writer, but I haven't got an MA in creative writing, or I haven't got any kind of creative writing. All my degrees have got nothing to do with writing. My undergraduate degree's got nothing to do with writing. I've got 2 MAs, they have nothing to do with writing. And okay, only now at this point doing my PhD, though it's a critical, creative PhD where I could really immerse myself in my poetry. But by the time I got to my PhD, I was already a published writer with a reputation, a good one, on the subject. Do you know what I mean? So when I went to university, when I then went to university and did my poetry, I was already established. So there's that knockback there. And what they wanted from me at that point was for me to change my work, which I didn't. I didn't change it in the sense of the content of what I was writing about, but of course, over the years as you go along, you develop and you master your art more, and you can craft your poems better. But that was the whole point of doing the course, because that's what the course was going to teach me. So.
Did it make you think twice about the kind of things you were putting into your work? Did you think, well, maybe I should shape it this way, maybe I should tone it down? Or did you just think, okay, cool, then I'll go in a different direction?
I'm contrary. The minute anyone says to me you can't do that, I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm going to prove you wrong. I don't know if it's because I'm short.
You're trying.
Maybe it is. I don't know if it's because I'm the middle child. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's because I'm a Gemini. But the minute you say to me, you can't do this or you can't have that or things will never change, I'm making a
Generally, successful people have that attitude. Yeah. You can't. Don't tell me you can't do it. I'm going to show you.
Yeah. And of course, I made that university known. That's the good bit. When you can go back and say, oh yeah, can you remember when you rejected me? Well, how do you like me now?
But obviously a lot has changed over the years, I think, as black artists and creatives. I think we are probably a lot more vocal, but it seems as though that from all the years back, people have been pushing back and have been really, I guess maybe that is part of the black identity in a way, having to push against resistance and continuing to share that message and that story. What words of advice or guidance, Colin, would you give to young black artists coming through now who might contemplate shaping who they are in order to fit or to be seen and accepted by a wider audience?
Well, I mean, it's like, it's always said traditionally, just keep pursuing, just keep going for it, believing in what you want to do, and just keep pushing, yeah. And expressing, because I think to be able to express you'll always find you get respect for that. When people see that you're expressing you, doesn't matter how long it takes them, but they're going to respect you. They're going to sit there. They'll sometimes eventually want you and take you in. Or in case of art, they'll go, I'm going to buy that piece of work because I can see he's honest and sincere and he's passionate about it. And they'll come to you and even ask you, okay, tell me about this piece of work. Why are you so passionate about it? Once you explain to them, okay, I'm going to buy that. So just keep expressing yourself. The people out there just want to always divert you and come this way or go that way. So yeah, I believe in that. Just do what you're passionate about.
For yourself, Karen, when you first started talking, you spoke about how when you first came to this country and to navigate what the UK was like. How do you feel now that you've been here? And you're creating work here and you're intentionally having these conversations about the impact and traumas of colonialism. What do you feel about all of that now?
Yeah, it was a really tough path. I mean, it was a long haul. Took me a long time to, get there and navigate the system. And coming here as a mature person and going back to university really for the first time. Totally different system, settling in, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, it was really tough. And when I was doing my masters at one time, I just felt like, oh my God, you know what? I can't do this anymore, you know what I mean? And I pushed through. And yeah, I think, it's now starting to pay off. It's a long road. I mean, I've been at this now I've been here 22 years this year. And I've been at it since we got here. So yeah, it has been a long road, but I'm glad I persevered. And I think that, I've met some great people along the way, and I have to thank the Arts Council. They've been great. They've supported me a lot. And for young artists coming up, I think it's really critical. Being a visual artist is not an easy career at all. It's not for the faint-hearted, and it's something that you really have to want to do. And you have to be very strategic in how you actually plot your way going forward, because I think that's one of the critical things that I did, and it has really paid off for me now. And I'm really happy to be here and just enjoying, actually getting a chance now to exhibit in bigger organizations and so on. Yeah, the experience has been great.
Thank you so much. Well, we are going to open the floor to questions. I just want to ask Panya, you've got a final question to you. You are a mother, you're also a grandmother. What do you hope your grandchildren will take away from your journey in terms of them moving forward in this world where they might face similar challenges that you've had?
What do I hope that they'll take away? Well, at the moment, I'm nurturing something I never received, because if you know the Caribbean story, when our parents came, they left behind their parents, so I never had a chance to meet my grandparents or to have that grandparent love. So of course I'm showering that onto my grandchildren. I've already identified their artistic talent. So my grandson is a drummer. So if you know anywhere, he's 9 at the moment. He's a good drummer. The eldest one is a poet. I've got a granddaughter who's a visual artist as well. She's forever creating things and what have you. So I've already identified that, and I'm feeding that. And I am a living example for them of pursuing my art, taking my art seriously, and also for speaking my truth, speaking it clearly, and speaking it politely too. So hopefully, especially the eldest one is 12, and so she sees more and understands more. And she was there at the whole castle situation that happened. And if you don't know what the castle situation is, Google it. You might come across some things that some trolls are saying about me. And the trolls are actually all white men who are really going to town in trying to demolish me. But you know what? I don't care. But she was there, and after that experience, she'd become much more involved in Black Lives Matter. Within a couple of days of that, she lives in Birmingham, I live in Nottingham. She emailed me a Black Lives Matter poem. She calls herself Melanin Queen. It's just really interesting to watch, but also very sad to see, because when that happened, she was 11, really, really upsetting, and I'm not going to talk too long on this because I don't want to get upset. Really upsetting to see that at the age of 11, she already has to be confronted with what it is to be a young black woman and how we are invisible, yet visible when it comes to being named as aggressive. So I hope they take my strength and my passion, my determination and my resilience through. That's what I'm trying to cultivate in them, because they're going to need it with this, the way the world is at the moment, with social media. So when you talked about what advice, I can't even think of what advice I would give to the next generation, because they're dealing with things that I've never had to deal with in my life, and I don't even know the answers to some of these things, especially the power of social media on young people today. That in itself is just phenomenal.
Well, Panya, Karen, Colin, thank you all so much. I mean, I've never done anything like this before, where I sat next to three very successful, very influential, and very intentional black artists. So it's been a pleasure to sit amongst you, to hear you speak, and to hear of your stories. So can you please join me in giving them a very big warm welcome? Question, please do.
I have one first one. You've spoken quite a bit about what it's like to be in the environment, in the organisations. But how did you navigate with your peers? What was that experience with the people that was on the same level as you, but from different identities?
Is that to me?
By the way, my hearing ain't that great.
You've got to turn the mic on.
Can you say it again?
Did you hear it?
The environment, what? Sorry.
So you've kind of mentioned about how you felt within working within the organisations and the strifes that happened when you were all working within different environments. But what was it like with the peers, your peers, the people that were meant to be at the same levels as you, but from different identities? Did they understand where you was coming from and relate to the agendas you had or the difficulties you had?
Not really.
No.
And how did you deal with that?
It's like a one-man show when you're out there, you're on your own.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Nobody can really understand.
Sorry, I couldn't only relate to that in the aspect of the music side, I guess. One of the instances was when we Steel Pulse was coming up. As far as reggae goes, we know about reggae. We were playing reggae music, and then came along UB40. And what I can understand is they were leading the way with reggae music, and along comes this band full of white guys playing reggae music, but yet they became successful as far as the mass public is concerned. Radio play, everything. And that got to me a bit, because, as I say, there was a bit of bias there. And, But as far as the art goes, as I say, doing commission work, it's if somebody wanted that piece of work or they don't want it, it wasn't anything to do. So I could see that aspect, that side of things where there were some bias or racist thing going on. As an artist, can he do this? Yes or no? So, but music-wise, there was a lot of that going on.
Any questions? Yes. You have a mic, so please just feel free to raise a hand and you can get a mic to you.
Hi there, thank you for the discussion. I just wondered, what kind of relationship you each have with your audience. Do you know who they are? How much do you engage with them? How much do you hear what they think of your work?
Well, I guess it's one of those, but I'll answer that. Because it's really strange. As I was saying to my daughter, I did an event, 50 people turned up. They were all white. My audience, the people who follow me, are in the main white, middle-aged women. In the main. That's my audience, and I don't know what that means. And I've just been really thinking about that. I was having this conversation with my daughter saying, well, these are the people who are supporting me. These are the people who are buying my work. I had my book launch in June. These are the people who come and buy multiple copies of my book and book me for things. And I'm thinking, so I've got to really start to think about my audience and make sure that I'm actually catering for them, because this is my fan base. My fan base is in the black community.
Can I say something? Again, it's always about music side of things. What I used to understand through listening and observing, like with the music radio stations, for instance, especially the BBC, because at the time, we're talking at the time, so they were the mains. With reggae music, it seemed as if the audience were more attracted to music or the words, when the words isn't understood properly or cannot understand it. Somehow it was attracting the radio station to play that more often. This is kind of strange. I'm one of those guys who, as I say, I used to study things. Why does this work that way? Why does it work this way, that way? And what I found was with the radio stations, with the reggae tunes that they used to put on to play, with the sweet love reggae songs, yeah? Or it's reggae songs that can't be understood. And I thought, it's very strange, but, like Alfie and Donna, don't you? Back in the 78, when that was out, who can, any white person wouldn't understand what they're saying. Some things, something, love is all I agree, But that was a big hit. And then you had another, Trevor Walters. Don't you remember Trevor Walters? He had a single reggae song. It was a lover's song, very melodic, easy to understand. And that became a hit. And eventually, not long after, we take them out at the chart, it's gone. Until another song comes. What's it, Trevor Rice? Trevor Rice, yeah. Mm-hmm. That's another reggae song, lyrics you couldn't understand, but those songs were being hits. Mm-hmm. So, what I was finding that the audience, the mass audience, white audience, or the radio stations were playing those songs that couldn't be understood, and they would be being hit record, they became hits. And I often wondered why that was, So, yeah, it's kind of a strange situation, but yeah. I don't know where that came from.
So I wonder if you just wanted to answer the question.
Well, for me it's different. I guess, most of the times my audience is an English audience. But it's different in terms of what space I actually exhibit in. Like, I recently had an exhibition last year in Brixton. So that's a very Caribbean audience, you know what I mean? And I just knew that once it was there, that it was going to, it would be a hit kind of thing. And, a lot of the community organizations and so on came to it and, had interviews with me and so on. And we worked with some of the local kids and all that sort of stuff. And I've only really begun in the last, well, it was supposed to be 2020, but COVID took care of that. So in the last 2 years to really exhibit in bigger spaces. And then, so my last exhibition was in Warsaw, and again, that's quite a, diverse community in Warsaw. And so I'm beginning to realize, it also depends on geographically where it is, and the politics and the, demography of that space. So yeah, it's something that I have to take into consideration all the time.
I just want to thank all three of you for really insightful conversation into the arts world and the kind of politics of it. And I wanted to ask a kind of follow-up question about the audience. I know you mentioned as well, Colin, that you have an audience for the reggae music and an audience for the art music. And you kind of said that there was a different way in which both of your art forms, I guess, are received differently. So that in terms of the reggae music, you were talking about the way that there's a reception from the wider public about how reggae can be played on mainstream radio. But then when you were talking about the arts world, you were saying that somebody was just talking about the way you could be commissioned for something and they ask you, can you do this? And you say yes. I was kind of wanting to ask if you could say a little bit more about that in terms of
the art side.
Yeah, the art side, like what was the key difference in terms of the audience reception? And then for, I know you were talking about gender, and I was going to ask both the women on the panel actually to kind of talk about the politics of gender in terms of your work, and because I think the question's asking a question about how do you have to adapt in terms of kind of thinking about race, and I was thinking, does that also mean, do you have to adapt thinking through being both racialised and gendered in particular ways? You hinted at that, well not hinted, you actually were talking about that a bit in terms of your ability to participate in the art world or not because of your responsibilities as a mother. So I just wanted to ask those kind of questions around the gender politics as well.
Well, I remember there was a time I was working in Germany. This guy, he was supposed to be managing an agent, and he was producing work, but he said to me, which I could understand because he's trying to market me. He was actually trying to get me to change my style and the way I was expressing myself. And, well, to be honest, I could have done it, but for some reason I just didn't want to change that, Obviously, to suit the market and for him to be able to market me. But that passion of wanting to express me and the style I put out there, I didn't really want to change that, So so that fizzled out, and I don't go there anymore. we parted way, put it that way. But I just thought, for me, it's important to express the way I am. And then if I feel I want to change, make a change at a certain point, because sometimes in life naturally we move that way. But it's up to the individual then to say, well, I'm ready to make that choice now. But I don't like the idea of, as an artist, in any form of art, to be told. It's like, I've got total respect for writers, songwriters. That's why I do the musicians. I've got loads of art musicians. Because they express them, the individual, the person that they're feeling, and the commitment. As a vocalist, the writing a song and the vocalist, Okay, I'll tell you something what's happening now. Right now, I'm doing another piece, a music one. I'm having to go through another video footage, to make up this picture. And what? I mean, I've been growing up in music and I've been watching live bands and everything and performances. But what I've just realized, while I'm going through these footage videos, I've turned the volume down. Turn the volume down while I'm watching these images, these singers, the artists, the songwriters, performing live. And I tell you something, you want to try it. It changes everything. You see, you're not hearing the words of the song, but you're seeing how they're expressing themselves, the commitment. It just woke me up. You know, it's just amazing. We take these people for granted, watch them on TV and everything, and say, we go to a live gig and we go, But these people are committed artists, you know. It's like, doing poetry and expressing stuff. And for that reason, you don't change, you can't change. You've got to keep expressing yourself. It's just amazing. Same visual, sound-wise, both the same.
Can I just ask a quick follow-up question before you guys answer your question? Where does that strong sense of self come from? In terms of you saying, this is who I am, this is what I'm going to do. Actually, I don't want to, I shouldn't dilute myself in any way, shape or form. Where does that strong sense of self come from? Colin. Just trying to give the question away. Because I'm very curious. I think there are some people who struggle with that. I sometimes struggle with that, Sometimes when you want to fit in, or maybe you might need the gig, or you might need the money, there are so many other pressures swaying you here, there and everywhere. But to really strive to stay strong in it.
We are all now.
But yeah, so I guess that insight is interesting.
I think it makes a difference me being a musician. But, I'm thinking, if I was a musician, would I probably go a different way? As far as the way I project my art. But apart from doing, a lot of portraiture work, I'll do the musicians. Doing the musicians is one of the ways of, as I say, expressing that passion of, and I've just said about how they express themselves live on stage. If someone is beginning or starting up, saying they want to be an artist and they don't know which route to go, I'd say, what I just said, go watch some footage videos and turn the volume down and watch these artists. And then you'll find out about passion and honesty and commitment, And so. I got the full question.
But for us now, as women, definitely, and I think that, for me anyway, I have so many things, I'm a mature person, the visual arts is predominantly and historically men. So, women are making a lot of headway, and even recently, we've had a great woman artist, Katie Hessel, writing her own history of art about women without men, and stuff like that. So I think women are making it. But I think as a mature person, a woman, somebody who originated from the Caribbean, I have a lot of things stacked against me. It's a difficult role. And when I was doing the exhibition at Lewisham House, the Sugar Houses, I worked with a curator, and we were talking about going to other places to try exhibitions, and we were going from place to place, and she just said to me one day, she said, listen, curators just don't know what to do with somebody like you. They don't know which box to put you in. because of that, because I'm a woman, and I'm an older woman, you know what I mean? I'm from the Caribbean, so yeah, it's quite difficult for me to really kind of break the barriers, but I think I am getting there slowly but surely. It's a commitment, it's a determination. I think if I wasn't so determined, and yeah, it's a passion. So you just gotta keep at it. You just gotta keep, doing what you do best and getting it. And again, for me as a visual artist, I can't keep my work in my studio. If I keep my work in my studio, nobody's else will see it. It's about getting out there. It's about networking. It's about, finding exhibition. So yeah, it's a constant. I don't know if anybody here is a visual artist, but once you're a visual artist, your life is consumed. There isn't much room for anything else because it's such a tough road, Yeah.
Yes, and I like to that by saying, well, of course, you've got all the practical things like where do you find time to write when you've got children, etc., which is why I then fell into a pattern of writing after midnight when the house was definitely quiet, and writing into the early hours of the morning. But there are all the problems that we face as black women. And I actually just got a couple of things here. So Lubaina Himid, for example, wrote something when she talked about what she wrote was called Mapping a Decade of Black Women Artists, and it was in a publication by Maud Salter called Passion Discourses on Black Women's Creativity. And one of the things Lubaina Himid said in this is that the art sector has only really welcomed input from black women when we, and this is what she said, rescue departments from themselves and each other. And what I will say to you, as my work as a creative practitioner, when I'm brought in to do work with different organisations, I'm generally brought in because there's a problem. I'm brought in as a troubleshooter because as a black woman, I guess they perceive that I'll be able to do this job. So when I go and I work within an arts organisation or a heritage organisation, I'm generally going in to do some really tough work that somebody else has failed at or somebody can't do. So that's one of the things that gets thrown our ways as black women. And then there's another quote I want to read for you. This is from a report by a company called McKinsey. And it's a big study of women in the workplace. And I'm going to share this quote with you because I can go through an entire working week and not come across another black person in a manager role. Can you believe that in Nottingham? And more than a third of the population in Nottingham is an ethnic minority. So just think about that. When I'm working with other arts organisations and with heritage organisations and I'm interacting in the meetings, I don't see another black person. And so McKinsey did this research and they called women like me who don't see anyone else onlys. So it said women who are onlys, meaning they are often one of the only people of their race or gender in the room at work, have especially difficult day-to-day experiences. Onlys stand out. They tend to be more heavily scrutinised. Their successes and failures are put under a microscope. They are more likely to encounter behaviour that reduce them to negative stereotypes. I experienced that. This is research here that I can definitely say are some of the things that I come up against all of the time. So there's lots of things that I experienced as a black woman. There's also a writer, Loretta Nkoba, and she talks about what we produce as black writers, and she said that our writing is seldom genteel since it springs from our experiences which in real life have none of the trimmings of gentility. So I remember a white writer saying to me, "Your writing is so full of pain, there's so much anguish in there, that's why I don't really buy black writers." But that pain is something that we have to actually get out. We have to get out, and that's what we're writing about, our experiences.
So musicians. So Bob Marley's.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm speaking as a writer, but I think these things cross, all different genres of arts. So, as black women, we come up against different issues to what maybe a white woman, to what maybe a black man might experience. And I definitely would say all of these things that I've come across in my research, I experience. Mm-hmm. I experience all the time, and I'm really shocked, especially in Nottingham, that I can work an entire week and not come across another black person. It's incredible. Nottingham.
And what about Birmingham not having any black people on their staff in the university at all when I was there?
Well, when you look at that whole thing, I think when you look at how many black female professors there are in the UK, there's something like 25 black female professors. You know, the number of men is a little bit higher. I think there's something like maybe 52 or so black male professors. The number of black male professors is higher than the women. And the person who did that research into how many black professors there are, how many black women professors, was a black woman professor. So it wasn't even a piece of research that was done by an institution that cared about this. It still took another black woman to highlight this disparity. So there are real issues that we face as black women as artists.
Hi, as a white middle-aged woman.
Are you going to buy my book?
Oh, sure, yeah. But it struck me, and I think maybe it's something that we to ask your opinions on, your thoughts on. It struck me that maybe one of the reasons we're your biggest purchasers anyway is the privilege we have in terms of the cultural capital we have in terms of the freedom and the money to go and peruse a bookshop and buy your books. And so therefore that kind of speaks to the broader problem of accessibility of art to the people without the money or the time to access the art. And I just wondered what you thought we could do as a community, or if that's something that if you think that is why, is that, or yeah, I don't know. It's just that that was something that brought in me. It was about the different power dynamics that people have when accessing art, as well as the people who are producing the art, and so therefore the issues of access to art and the artistic experience as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I've recently kind of zoned in on and started to kind of wonder why it is that my fan base is white, middle-aged women, and I wouldn't say that you're middle-aged, so I'll just add that in there. So I'm not quite sure why. Maybe it is about the cultural capital. Maybe it is that black people don't see the value in going to a book launch or going to a bookshop, or they don't have the finances to be able to do that. I'm not sure of the reason why. I do try to make myself accessible. I perform in lots of different venues, and and I do try and keep the costs of my publications down. I'm also the founder of Nottingham Black Archive, and we produce a whole range of publications. And I never produce anything that's over £5, specifically because I want to make sure that it's affordable. So I don't know what the reason is. I don't know if it's because what I write about black people know already. They're already experiencing this.
Yeah.
They're already experiencing it, so they don't need it.
Yeah, that's one
again. Maybe it's that, but I haven't asked why, and maybe that's an area of research that I could dig into a little bit more. But yeah, that's yeah. So it's always interesting when you perform into.
The thing is, curiosity will always attract. So if white people are curious,
And familiarity breeds contempt. So if you are familiar with your community, it's just that, oh, it's only Panya and it's just it's just another one of their books. We don't need to support that. Maybe, who knows?
It's about just supporting our own real. We don't support our own real.
But what I will say though is that, they might not be there at my book launch, they might not be the biggest purchasers of my work, but with the whole castle situation, the black community had my back. Still have my back. Two protests.
Don't turn up.
Two protests at the castle. Petition that had over 700 people signing it. The black community, a large percentage of the black community, because you're never going to get everyone. I've had my back and have been very supportive. I can't even go and shop in my local supermarket without being stopped by someone from the black community telling me, to keep going, we're right behind you, So support in a different way.
I think that would happen, as I said, but to turn up is another matter. As I said, with live venue, live gig, reggae gigs, they don't turn up, they won't turn up, but they'll put in their support. Really can.
So I don't know if that answers.
Yeah, no, I think you brought up the same thing, that because there are other ways of engaging with your material, and and it was a broader question to everybody as well, and maybe these are the challenges that we're measuring in purchases, but there's so many other ways that the material is reaching people, engaging with the material, even if they don't purchase the book or turn up at the exhibition.
Sure.
So I want to round up with a final question, and that question is, how do you think change can come? How do you think change can come? So when we're talking about barriers or that struggle of authenticity that some rock artists face, how can change truly come?
Yeah, well, I think Panya made a really good point when she said it has to come from the top.
Yes.
In these organisations.
But how are we going to get that change?
That's going to take a little while.
Or does it? So the whole castle situation, I want to change there. After the racist incident, I want to change there. I wanted a new board, and I wanted that board to be diverse. So that board was predominantly men, middle class, white. And that can't be the case in Nottingham. It can't. 2011 census had the ethnic minority population at 33%.
Wow.
The 2021 census, the last time I went on, the data on ethnicity wasn't ready yet, but I'm absolutely certain that will be more than 33%. Absolutely certain of that, because the general population has risen. So I think it will be. So you can't have a board in a city that as diverse as that being largely a monoculture. So how do you bring about change? You protest. And that's what we did. It took 13 months to shift the chair from Nottingham Castle. And there was a number of people who said, he will never leave, he will never step down.
Can you just give a bit of an overview? Because you're talking about the Nottingham Castle bit a lot, and I don't know whether the audience knows anything about it. So just a quick overview. I don't want to go into, do you have where you want to go? But to kind of put in some context.
Okay, so a quick overview then is in August 2021, I was at the castle with my grandkids. Prior to that, during 2021, I curated an exhibition at Nottingham Castle, because that's the work I do through Nottingham Black Archive. It had photography by Banjoko Burke, it had some film work by Keith Piper, and it had some archival artifacts from Nottingham Black Archive. So the exhibition was about the Windrush generation and their contribution to the economy of the city. A really good, strong exhibition. The castle had just reopened after being closed for 3 years, and it was a really great accolade that at its opening was this black exhibition, and of course even greater that I was the curator of this. So I'm on cloud 9. You know, I'm feeling like, yes, I've arrived. Do you know what I mean? I've arrived. So grandkids come up from Birmingham and Bristol, and of course I'm like, come on to the castle and see what grandma gets up to when you're not here. You know, you might have ideas of grandma sitting down knitting and doing whatever. This is what she does. And we went to the castle to have a really good time. 2 of my grandchildren were racially assaulted, racially abused, physically pushed around, blah, blah. I don't want to go into that too much because that's the bit that really upsets me. I called for help, and the senior manager at the castle, when she came on the scene, the first thing that came out of her mouth was, to me, you're being aggressive. I'm upset. I'm upset. 2 of the 4 of my grandchildren that had with me on that day, who are in my care, have been hurt. And this woman is telling me that I'm being aggressive. And then not only that, but they then tried to trap me into a corner. And the perpetrator walked away, out the gate, into freedom. No one even approached this white family. But they came for me. And so, of course, I put in a complaint about that. And the response from the chair was, oh, we'll do a review of the castle. And I'm like, no, this isn't about a review of the castle. This is an investigation into my complaint and why you didn't implement your safeguarding procedure. This is a safeguarding matter. It involves minors. And this has gone on and on from August 2021 right through to 2 protests, petitions, etc., to the point where I now have a meeting with the board scheduled for the 30th of November. After all this time, 30th of November, hopefully I'm going to sit and have a meeting with the board and find out what I want. But a lot of people said you wouldn't change anything. And so that brings back round to that question of, how can you change things? Belief. If you start off on this journey believing that you can't change anything, then you can't change anything. There were a number of people in key positions, key organisations who said to me, don't waste your time because nothing will change. And I refuse to believe that. Because if we're saying that when we come up against racism, what we should do is walk away because nothing will change, then I might as well give up now. I might as well say to my grandkids, look, you're going to be racially abused for the rest of your life. Suck it up because nothing ever changes. I can't do that. I can't believe that. I have to believe, because this is what keeps me getting out of bed every day. I have to believe that change will come. I have to believe that. And it is that belief that has created a shift. So the man at the top who said he would never step down, I stepped down. And that was the biggest boulder to shift. And I shifted it. I came across Keith Piper's work after this. After I was kind of like, no, things can change. There's a piece of work that Keith Piper produced where I think it was about Huey P. Newton, and in it he had some text saying that he lost, but the reason he lost is because no one ever thought he would win. You see, and I thought exactly, that's where we need to be. We need to believe that change can happen and then go through. Now, what I will say is it hasn't been easy. It absolutely hasn't been easy. I've suffered insomnia. There's points where I've cried. I've been in my bed crying. Right at the very beginning, the whole stress of it, and I think it's important for me to say these things so that the young warriors coming up who are going to be the next people challenging this understands the physical toll that this has on your body. There was a point where I couldn't even turn my head because of all the stress. I literally couldn't turn my head, and I remember managing just to get myself on my bed and calling to my daughter and asking her if she could come and just pull the covers over me, because I literally couldn't do that. So it's taken its toll on me, but the bigger picture is I've got to leave behind a better world for my grandkids. I've got to do that, and I'm going to die trying. And they know that. They know that I will die trying to make this world a better place for them. And that's what we all need to be doing. And that's what, it's not even about applause. There are people in this room are in influential, perhaps, and significant positions. And what I want you to do is to be agitating for change and diversity in terms of boards and management structures within heritage and arts organisations, because that's where it's at. If that board at the castle had been a diverse board, what happened to me on that day would have been dealt with much more quickly, because there was an incident that happened after mine of a black artist, a black woman. They're treating black women in Nottingham really badly, Black artist, again it made all the national news. Her unfinished work was launched. She wasn't even invited to the launch of her work, and of course, when that happened, she spoke out against it, and the board of that organisation immediately met with her. But the board of that organisation was a diverse board, and the board members that met with her was 3 black and brown women. So you see, when you have a diverse board, even though it fell to black women supporting black women again, the artist got her resolution. Something I'm still waiting for. I'm still waiting. So 30th of November is D-Day. Can't wait. Can't wait.
Can I just ask, are you going into that meeting on your own?
I'm not going into that meeting on my own, and I will speak to you more about that off the record.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us this evening. Thank you for listening and sharing, offering questions. It's been really, really inspiring. Of course, for all 3 of you sharing your journeys as well. It's been amazing. Thank you to Tara and the whole team at Opal 22 and ACC for putting on a fantastic event. Feel free to hang around. There's food. There's books as well to grab, so please do that. And once again, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. I'm Colin Gabbidon. I'm from Jamaica. I'm born in Kingston. I came here back in the 60s. Came straight to Handsworth, Birmingham, where I've lived basically all my life. Well, I'm a musician and a visual artist, and right now I'm more committed to doing my artwork more so than I used to be. Projecting my inner self in the form of visual art is what I think is the way for me to go now. I love the idea of expressing in art visual form those musicians, those singers that has inspired me growing up. I just gravitated to that, and I can relate to that, and it's almost like my duty to put these people on canvas, people who I grew up with, who inspired me to play music and also to inspire me to express myself, I'm on Instagram at Gabbidon Art Gallery, Instagram and Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn as well, Colin Gabbidon. And that's where they can find me.
I'm Karen McLean. I'm originally from Trinidad and Tobago. I came here at the end of 2000, and I live in Birmingham. I'm a visual artist. I'm an artist because I love art, It's a passion, and I tend to blend 2 things that I love the most, making and history. A Hessian sack is like the coffee sacks that carry the coffee. So Hessian is a container. The Hessian sack is a container vessel that has always carried commodities. So the Hessian sack in this particular exhibition is acting as a metaphor for the enslaved woman. I was interested in the enslaved woman whose body became a site of oppression, but also became a site of resistance, as well as the fact that the enslaved women were bred on the plantations, and every child that they bore, was free labor for the plantation owner. So they became commodified. I chose the Hessian sack for its, as I said before, its durability and its strength, but also as a metaphor for the woman and the commodification of the enslaved woman. I'm also on Instagram, Karen McLean _art. I have a Facebook page. I have my own website, www.karenmclean.co.uk. And most of my information is really on that.
Okay, my name is Panya Banjoko and I'm from Nottingham. Okay, I do a number of different things. I'm a poet. I'm the founder and keeper of Nottingham Black Archive. I'm a creative practitioner and a creative producer. I do all these things because I believe that the arts is a tool to be used for change. And that's why I do what I do. I also love writing and performing poetry as well, so there's a bit of personal enjoyment in there too. There's a new mini anthology. It's called 10 Poems About Black History. I've selected the poems, and there's also one of my poems included in there too. It's been published by Candlestick Press, so anybody who wants to get a hold of a copy of that, they can do, from Candlestick Press. Also, if anyone's interested in my own personal poetry, my poetry pamphlet, Reframing the Archive, can be obtained from Burning Eye. I thought this evening went well, and shall I tell you for why? Okay, somebody just came up to me in there and said to me, I'm going to make sure now, when I'm working within the heritage sector and I'm on boards, that I'll be calling for those boards to be representative. For me, that's success. If it's just one person who understands that diversity needs to happen, that's a great success. So for me, the event it's been fantastic. It's been fantastic. And of course, I'm selling books too, so that's even more good. If people want to know and have more of Panya, they might not, then I've got a website, panyabanjoko.com, and everything is on there. All my books are on there, and my videos as well. Some of my performance poetry is on there, so people can hit me up on panyabanjoko.com.
I think we've had a fabulous night tonight. I think everybody has really got a lot out of the conversation that was delivered. The panel were amazing. They were really thought-provoking. They brought everything that I expected. I knew that the people that we brought together would really challenge the subject and get to the roots of what we wanted to talk about tonight, which was the ideas of how, as Black artists, we have to deliver our message when we're working with mainstream organisations. So yeah, I think we smashed it.